my blissful selves. Let us know in brief about the state of spiritual aspirant, that is mumukshutva. So what is this mumukshutva? Mumukshutva is the desire to become free from all misery and the desire to attain permanent happiness. So this desire may be very intense or moderate, or it may be minimum. But if we have to become free from misery, we would have very intense desire. But generally, people think that there is no urgency to become free from misery. Usually they think that they can do that after earning lands, constructing buildings, marrying, getting children, and arranging the marriage to them, etc. So if there is no intense desire to become free from misery, as we go on enjoying the sensory objects, the desire to enjoy the sensory objects increases gradually. And lastly, it strengthens. And the gross body enjoying the sensory objects becomes old, and lastly it dies. We can become free from all misery by thinking that the transactions of mundane waking world give us misery only. Many sages explain that if at all we have to become free from all misery, we have to give up the desire of sensory objects and the desire of gross body and the gross body consciousness. And we have to stand still in one's true nature, that is existence, consciousness, bliss. For this, we have to search the preceptors. We have to serve them. And we have to listen their teachings very carefully and reflect these teachings and realize them by attaining the knowledge of our true self, by meditating on our true self, and lastly, by realizing our true self. We have given up innumerable gross bodies for earning these sensory objects, rearing them, enjoying them, and protecting them. But even an iota of happiness is not left behind. So this clearly indicates that there is no happiness in gross body consciousness and in the enjoyment of sensory objects. When even we listen the teachings of saints and sages, We have to attain the knowledge samadhi at once. During spiritual practice, there will be many obstacles. For example, heavy rain, lightning, thundering, earthquake, etc., etc. We should not give any attention to all these, but we have to continue our spiritual practice. That is, listening the teachings of the saints and sages, reflecting over them, and realizing them. We should not postpone this. The spiritual practice can be carried on while sitting, standing, walking, sleeping, while taking food, etc. But we are not doing this because we are trying to satisfy the desires of sensory objects. But the desires of sensory objects cannot be satisfied by enjoying them. But as we go on enjoying them, the desire to enjoy them increases gradually and lastly strengthens. So when we are enjoying the sensory objects, we have to think whether there is happiness or not in sensual enjoyment. But we don't inquire whether there is happiness in sensual enjoyment or not. And that is how we have not been in a position to know whether the happiness is there in the sensory objects or not. The birthright of human being is to attain permanent happiness. But those who have intense desire to attain permanent happiness, they very quickly make their intellect pure by the power of discrimination and dispassion, and attain permanent happiness now only. When we are enjoying the sensory objects, we think some objects give happiness and other sensory objects give unhappiness. We will have the desire to enjoy the sensory objects of our own likeness. And if anybody becomes an obstacle to get it, so there will be hatred towards them. We like the sensory objects which we think that they are givers of happiness. And we dislike the sensory objects which we think that they are givers of unhappiness. So like this, there arise likes and dislikes in our mind. People may become an obstacle to get the land, to construct the buildings, to earn money, to marry. But people don't become an obstacle for inquiring which is happiness and unhappiness, which is self and which is non-self. For inquiring which is happiness and unhappiness, which is self and non-self, there is no restriction whether the particular person have to belong of any particular time or any particular country or doing any type of work. When the spiritual aspirant firmly understands that the permanent happiness is not found not found in the mundane waking state or in heaven. Then one inquires, where is happiness? Later he will come to know that it is in the self. But this is all intellectual knowledge, but not the intuitional knowledge. We should have firm understanding in our mind that the sensory objects and the gross body are not givers of happiness. And happiness is in the self. To attain this, we have to attain knowledge samadhi. To attain this knowledge samadhi, we have to reflect whatever we have listened and we have to realize. If we do this continuously, we can attain knowledge samadhi. This practice can be continued at any time. So, the spiritual aspirant has to meditate the self, which is of the nature of happiness, and we have to experience it. But it is very difficult to give up the passion of sensory objects, that is, of form, smell, taste, touch, and word. We have to destroy completely the passion of all these. We have to conquer the passion of the sensory objects enjoyed in the past and the passion of enjoying the sensory objects in the present. Later come the Rakshasa, Brahma Rakshasa, Pishachi, and the Brahma Pishachi as an obstacles. And what exactly they do is, they threaten the spiritual aspirant and make them to give up the spiritual practice. So, the threatening of these Rakshasas, Brahma Rakshasas, Pishachis, and Brahma Pishachis can be faced thinking that all these are imaginary beings which have been created by the mind, and we have to think them all as false. So we can continue again. The state of spiritual aspirant in the next lecture. And by this, I end my talk.